Welcome to DIY Easy Crafts and BergKnifeMaking.com. Today we're going to take a look at how to make prickly pear cactus resin knife handles. Now I found this prickly pear cactus material online. I believe it was on Amazon, but it might have been on Etsy. I've had it for a little while. I just thought it would make really cool knife handles. So I figured I'd give it a shot. I've been working a lot with this TotalBoat ThickSet epoxy. Before I set it into epoxy or cast it into the epoxy, I wanted to stabilize it. Now I'm not 100% sure if you really even needed to stabilize this cactus. When you embed it in the resin, I'm sure that it would have soaked up some of the resin and probably become hard enough. I just didn't want to take a chance. So I stabilized it just like I do wood in cactus juice. And then you put it in an oven for a couple of hours. I think it was 250 degrees. And that's what sets that resin and makes it nice and hard. When it comes out of the oven, the material is substantially heavier and also harder. This stuff is so fine; it's still brittle at this point. But it's the stabilization didn't hurt it at all. It only could help. So anyway, here we go with the resin casting portion. I've been using this TotalBoat ThickSet epoxy for the last half dozen videos or so. I just got started with it and it's so easy to work with. I use their ThickSet resin. It's a 3-to-1 mixture, 3 parts of the resin, 1 part of the hardener. I mix it up in these little mixing cups that they provide, which actually have the measurements right on the inside, so they're very easy to pour. The only thing, you want to stir very slowly, and you want to stir for at least 5 minutes. If you don't stir it enough, you're going to end up with issues. You stir it for the full 5 minutes, it's going to get nice and hard, right through the whole casting. What's really nice about this stuff is it's so thin and it has a long set time, so that bubbles have a real hard time getting trapped. They have plenty of time to reach the surface. Now this is going to be a real test because this prickly pear cactus is like a lattice, and it's a coarse lattice. So the material itself is going to want to hold on to any bubbles that are in that resin. So we'll see. I mixed up a batch of clear, and I just poured it right on top of the cactus. This cactus is not perfectly flat, so a good portion of the cactus is actually sticking out of the resin. Some parts of it are resting on the bottom of the mold. These molds I got from a company called Woodcraft. There are a few companies that make them. I got mine from Woodcraft. If you look real close now, in that clear, there are some bubbles, and the bubbles all seem to be, hanging on to the sides of that cactus. I'll call it wood or cactus lattice. So you could do a couple things here. You could tap on the side of the mold. You could vibrate it. It would be really great if you had a pressure pot. It would reduce the size of those bubbles. I really wanted to do these videos without the use of a compressor or pressure pot. So I just used a needle. And I just visualized each one of those bubbles and popped it, or allowed it to get to the surface just by nuzzling, by moving it a little bit. I then let the resin cure for 3 days before I demolded it. They pop right out of the silicone mold very easily. And that's really the entire project. You could stop right there and just grind down whatever cactus is sticking out of the resin. I would give it another 3 or 4 days to cure completely before sanding and polishing it. I wanted to play around with adding some color. So what I did was I ground the top surface of the cactus. This is the portion that was, the cactus was sticking above the resin. I ground that all flat. And this process also thinned out that scale block a little bit. And my plan here is to put it back into the mold, and because I've reduced the height a little bit, I'll be able to fit a little bit more colored resin. I don't want to put the resin into the mold first and put the block on top, because there could be air bubbles. So I'm going to actually resin the top. Before I did that, I cleaned it off with some rubbing alcohol. Got off any dust If you look real careful on one of these blocks, there is a tiny little bubble. You see a little white spot. I'm almost expecting a couple of tiny little bubbles like that when I actually make the knife handles out of them. These are nothing that can't be filled with a little bit of CA glue. So anyway, I put the scales back into the knife handle mold, and I mixed up another batch of TotalBoat ThickSet epoxy mixed with a little bit of red dye. The object here is not to have it be a very thick coating of the red. I really just wanted to introduce some color. In hindsight, you could certainly add the color just with a colored liner. You don't have to do this step at all. I didn't have any colored liners that were the red that I wanted, so this is what I did. So these scales are now done. I'm just going to clean up a little bit of that red resin that leaked onto the bottom of this scale material. And then I'll have a nice set of Prickly Pear Cactus scales. And I really think these are going to end up looking, really nice on a knife. I'll probably get these mounted to a blade that I'm working on next week. So you check out the Facebook, our Facebook group, Knives and Knife Making, for updates. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I ask that you please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this YouTube channel. As I mentioned before, please join us on our Facebook group, Knives and Knife Making. And if you're interested in making your own knives, check out the book that Jason Northgard and I put out about 1.5 years ago called Introduction to Knife Making, and you can find that on Amazon.com. Thank you very much.